Hello, everyone. Okay, so this is the overall briefing of how to write your body paragraphs for your documented essay. I'm going to use the class essay as an example. This is body paragraph 1. As you can see at the top, I have mapped out our ideas, our brainstorm ideas for body paragraph 1. I kind of created this sheet so that I'm not flip-flopping back and forth between the bubble sheet we created, which is here, that bubble sheet. I basically wrote the information at the top of an actual rough draft sheet so that I'm not flipping back and forth. Okay, so you see our ideas at the top. As I've stated before, we have 7 ideas, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then we have 7 spaces here designated for our 7 sentences. We're going to transform the 7 ideas into 7 sentences. So just watch closely as I write this paragraph. I also want you to turn in your workbooks, your DRE 098 workbook, and copy the information as well. Copy this into your DRE 98 workbook as well, okay, under the class essay. Now, the one you're doing for homework is going to be your individual graded essay. Remember, that one focuses on exonerees. This one focuses on inmates. So, before we get started, I just want to zoom in to the major detail A. Okay, major detail A, other inmates. If you look at the supporting detail number 1, in the class brainstorm, we had mentioned Dwayne Dale's rape, and then under number 2, we were going to explain it. Well, I went and changed this quote, and I'm going to use a quote also from Dwayne Dale's article, and this is going to be on page 2. The quote begins with, "He asked me." The reason I switched to use this quote is because we're focusing on fear of other inmates, okay? So when Dwayne Dale was raped, he was not in fear when he was raped. He actually was very trusting, very calm, and he let his guard down. That is the reason he was raped. He wasn't raped because of fear. So I realized that we cannot use that quote. And so the quote that I'm replacing it with, like I said, begins with, "He asked me." And this quote can be found on page 2 of Dwayne Dale's article. And it reads, "He asked me if I was scared, and I said yes. Yes, I was scared." It goes on in the next sentence. He asked me if I would feel safer in a smaller block. Okay, so basically in this area, Dwayne Dale is talking about his fear in prison. Okay, so that better supports the paragraph about fear. So I'm going to use that quote. I'm going to explain it. Everything else is the same. Okay, so let's get started. We write in the order of the bubble sheet. That is the most important part that you should remember, and you definitely should use this as a practice as you're writing your papers. First, I'm going to get started by highlighting my topic, which is fear, and I'm going to highlight my major detail sections and my wrap up. Okay, so those are highlighted. I'm going to insert my transition words. I'm choosing to use first and next. There are other transition words to use. As long as they make sense, feel free to change it up for your graded essay. Okay, so technically at the top I have my topic sentence. One challenge inmates face while in prison is fear. So technically this sentence about fear is already written. We've already written that sentence. Now we want to write major details A and B because they directly touch the topic. They're touching the topic, so we need to go ahead and write them, okay? So we'll pause for a second. I just want to explain why you have highlighted these sections. Your paragraph is focusing on fear. Therefore, I should see the word fear mentioned in your major details as well as your wrap-up. So you're highlighting these sections to serve as a reminder. You either have to mention fear or it has to be obvious that this is a fearful situation. So I have to see fear, like physically see it, or it has to be implied in your wording, okay? So in order to write major detail A, our major detail A is other inmates. I want to make the connection. What are we saying about fear in other inmates? So make the connection and create the sentence. Well, one challenge inmates face while in prison is fear. Now, other inmates, we have to mention fear. Well, first, I'm going to write many, and you guys know my handwriting is terrible. Many inmates develop a fear of other inmates. Okay, so first, many inmates develop a fear of other inmates. I connected fear with the idea of other inmates, made the connection, wrote the sentence. Double check, did I mention fear? Because it is highlighted. I did. So that sentence has been created. Now we're going to create major detail B, which pertains to guards. Even though that comes next here, be careful because major detail B is down here. So make sure you write it in the appropriate spot, okay? So your major detail can sound like your major detail B can sound a lot like major detail A. So I could say, next, many inmates develop a fear of guards. Yeah, I definitely could say that. I'm choosing to just switch up the wording a tad bit. So I'm going with next, some inmates fear the guards. Okay, so first, many inmates develop a fear of other inmates. Next, some inmates fear the guards. Okay, I've written this sentence as well. Now, we have to write supporting details 1 and 2. Well, what do they touch? They're touching other inmates. So I just want to go into my rough draft and I want to circle other inmates. This just allows me to shift my focus. So now I know we're talking about fear of other inmates, okay? So what do we have here? We have our quote. Well, I'm going to go into Dwayne Dale's article, okay? And I have my quote identified. Okay, but you want to write it word for word. My quote is going to start here. He asked me if I was scared, and I said yes, I was scared. I'm sorry, and there's a period here. So I'm going to stop here, just so you know. I want to write it, just move it basically into my support 1. But there's a format. You can't just take it and chunk it and throw it in there, okay? So in order to write this quote, you want to look at page 2 of the works cited information that I've given you. Go to the section where it reads in-text citation. Okay, to insert a quote, you want to go down to inserting direct quotes. First, you want to give me the speaker and the word states. So the speaker and the word states. So who is speaking in this case? Well, in this case, it is Dwayne Dale. So I'm going to write his name. Dwayne Dale states. Okay. Now, what do we do next? It says direct quote. So I want to put the actual direct quote there. It has an open quotation. You insert the direct quote, and you close your quotation. So let me find my direct quote. It reads, he asked me if I was scared, comma. So I want to open the quotation and write, he asked me if I was scared, comma. I want to get the rest of that. And I said, comma. So, and I said, comma. Yes. I was scared. Now notice there's a quotation inside of the quotation we've already opened. So even though this one has two, when you have a quote inside the quote, the one inside is going to open with only one quotation. So I said, yes, comma, I was scared. I was scared. I want to close it with one, okay? Because this one opened with one, I'm closing it with one. But also I have to close this one because I opened with two. So in the end, it's going to look a little weird. It's going to look like three. I'm closing the one that had one, and I'm closing the one that had two. This is not going to always be so crazy because you're not going to always have a quote in a quote. But you definitely have to